as members kick against imposition of candidates. I think the drama that we will get into with regards to 10th National Assembly, we're not ready for it yet. I think Nigerians are going to go through, a lot of drama. But we'll be here for it to, of course, give you the latest updates. Diesel tanker accident worsens gridlock on Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, and also flight disruption in Abuja as Max Air loses landing wheel. We can also find here in Osun State, public education and infrastructure in dire straits. Sudan crisis, we slept on floor as bullets killed people on bed.
Wow.
All right. Shocking story.
I'd been seeing a number of Nigerians who have recounted their experiences as well. There was a lady who documented her experience at different points. She filmed the bus where they were in. At some point, the gas had gone out. They were inside. Of course, the ACs weren't on. They couldn't wind down. It's just been a hellish situation. This morning, as I was coming to work, I actually was thinking about the Nigerians who were stranded in Sudan, because it's news headlines for a number of people, but it's the reality of many Nigerians.
For a lot of people,
for just thinking that you don't know if you're going to make it home. You don't know if you're going to survive this.
Yeah.
It's just...
I don't know. I mean, they were meant to evacuate about 3,500 people according to the $1.2 million budget. So far, there's reports that
1,410, I hear.
1,410?
that have
okay,
been,
I thought one of the stories said 800.
Yeah, about 1,400. And they're expecting, more people.
Some more, okay.
Yeah, I'm hoping that as many all Nigerians, so far we don't have any recorded deaths as a result of the crisis. And we're hoping that it remains that way. We don't have any recorded deaths or extreme injuries.
Yeah. Oh, all right. Best of luck to those Nigerians, and we hope that the evacuation process goes smoothly.
A part of their concern, for a number of them would be the fact that their schooling, how are they able to continue their education? I heard that the federal government has promised that they're going to find a way to sort of merge their experiences with the current education system. Like, these people knew why they went to go and school in Sudan in the first place, why they left the country to go and school outside.
Oh. No comment until, some of this drama starts to unveil itself. All right, moving away from The Guardian, let's go to This Day Nigeria.
All right, on this day in Nigeria, 10th National Assembly, APC, NWC meets today to ratify consensus and zoning. Leadership tussle worsens as 68 senators elect reject deal. Group warns Tinubu party not to plunge selves into crisis. Southeast senators caution president-elect against injustice. ACF dissociates self from ex-Niger Delta minister's endorsement. Buhari directs NUPRC to take over supervision of all crude oil export terminals. Functions overlap with NMDPRA resolved. Over 143 passengers escaped death as Max Air crash lands in Abuja. I can imagine what the last few minutes of that happening, everybody will pray.
And it's funny because, a couple of days earlier, I remember that a very popular legal practitioner, Inibehe, F. Young, I think, had posted a video of very, very insane turbulence that they were experiencing in the flight here in Nigeria. I'm not sure where he was headed, but it was a video that a lot of people were commenting on, about how scary it is.
Was he on the flight?
Yeah, he was on the flight,
okay.
And he was a lot of people were commenting on how scary it is, being in, really severe turbulence flying in Nigeria. And then a couple of days later, we're seeing this one happen here where the tires burst. So it's just interesting that they happen back to back, in less than 3 days apart.
Absolutely. I mean, it's something. It's not something anybody wants to experience.
Oh, definitely.
But I think our joy here is that there are no casualties, no lives were lost.
Yeah.
And like we said, we hope that Max Air looks into what the cause of this crash landing may have been to ensure that it doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
All right. Final story this morning on the front page of This Day newspaper. Oh, two more stories. Dangote says, my refinery can save Nigeria $10 billion in FX, generate another $10 billion in exports. You see this conversation about Dangote's refinery? It's been an ongoing conversation, but we're not looking into it today. PDP says APC plotting to influence outcome of petitions at tribunal, which of course begins today. And we'll be talking about this as it's one of our top stories this morning on Breakfast Central. But that's all the papers that we have for this first hour. We'll certainly be looking at more papers when we get to the top of the hour. But for now, we'll go on a break. And when we return, our top stories. Stay with us.
Africa is rising. Again, we hear our sounds echo on the other side. Afrobeat and Afropop reinvented, hip life brought back to life, new energy infused into Kwaito and Kwela. Africa is balling. Every stroke, every shot, every raise, we find our place at the top. Taking the helm of real power, new hopes for democracies. A breed of entrepreneurial tigers, audacious storytellers, and a promising generation raring to go. Truly, Africa is rising. And this is where the stories that define our continent live. Africa needs its own storytellers, people who understand the continent because they're from it. People who know that news is more than just a conversation starter, it's our stories. Because these stories run deeper than headlines and segments. It's about digging deeper to get the facts and telling the human side of every single story, not just the echoes from foreign headlines and perspectives. It's time to take back our narratives and share them in our voices. The birth of Africa's New Age reporting, and this is where it begins, right here at News Central TV, with stories that put Africa first.
News Central TV, Africa's #1 storyteller, has come with the best of both worlds. With a combination of news app and live TV, we ensure that you keep track of the latest headlines, breaking news, and in-depth analysis from professional journalists from around the continent. Download the News Central TV app on Android and iOS and get started today. Don't forget to follow us on News Central's social media platforms. News Central, Africa First.
Welcome once again to Breakfast Central. We begin in South Africa, where AgriSA, which is South Africa's largest agricultural organization, has warned that the country is facing a food crisis as a result of a continued and escalating load shedding. And they say the South African government is doing nothing to alleviate the situation. According to AgriSA CEO Christo van der Reed, South Africans have begun seeing lower supply of certain food items on the shop shelves. And the problem would only worsen unless strong initiatives are put in place to protect food producers. Consumers in the country have already experienced the greatest level of food inflation in 14 years.
The country's official statistics body, Stats SA, recorded a 14% food inflation in March, with the sector being the key driver of headline inflation, moving higher rather than slowing as expected. Now, joining us this morning to discuss this further is the CEO of AgriSA, Christo van der Reed. Good morning, and thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning. It's always a privilege to engage with you on critical matters such as food security.
All right, now, from the reports we're seeing, according to Stats SA, we're seeing that this is South Africa is experiencing the worst inflation in the past 14 years, especially in the area of food. And some of the conversations we've seen surrounding this food crisis would be that load shedding is a major contributor. Are there other angles to perhaps look at this from? Would you say that there are other contributors to South Africa's current food crisis?
Yeah, there's a number of factors, but load shedding is the biggest driver of food inflation at this point in time. We've seen a massive spike in the price of vegetables. Now, you all know that vegetable farmers rely on irrigation. But if there's no electricity, you cannot operate your irrigation systems. So farmers have cut back on their plantings, and the number of hectares that they planted in the past are now smaller due to load shedding. So this in itself poses a serious challenge, especially for food suppliers and also for the availability of food on the shelves. We've also seen that many shops do not or cannot take in more meat, for example, meat products and other perishable products, because due to load shedding and due to the cost of sourcing in alternative energy producing mechanisms such as diesel generators and solar panels, they cannot keep a lot of perishable stock in their cold storage facilities. And that, at the end of the day, leads to food shortages on the shelves, which pushes up the price of food.
All right, really, really scary. And the South African government has implemented some regulations that recognize food production and food storage facilities as essential infrastructure.
Indeed.
Do you think this? Go ahead, Mr. Van der Reed. I wanted to ask if any of these moves will bring about the change or would help the situation, because making them essential infrastructure, does that keep them away from the power cuts, or make them less susceptible to power cuts? And talk also about the food producers. How do they also survive the situation?
So AgriSA has been engaging with Eskom. We've been engaging with government. We've made government aware of the challenge of food insecurity. And, food insecurity and food inflation can lead to social instability in any country. Now, South Africa has been very fortunate in that we've got a very advanced commercial agriculture system, and our farmers produce enough food. So at farm level, there's enough food. We've had a very good maize production here. We've also had a very good soya production here. And we've got ample food, at farm gate level. The bigger challenge, obviously, is throughout the rest of the value chain, where food must be processed, whether it's meat, whether it's maize. Maize cannot be sold just like that. It needs to be processed into maize meal. And the same with meat. You're not going to deliver a sheep or a cow at somebody's door. It needs to be packaged. There's a cold storage facility that must maintain the integrity of the food and the quality of the food. And this is the kind of engagement that we have had with government over time. Now, a Minister of Electricity has been appointed, but it seems to me the Minister of Electricity does not have any legislative framework on which he can execute his mandate. And we need the President to solve this matter as soon as possible. And then in addition, we are engaging again today with Eskom on finding solutions for sorting out the challenge, especially at grassroots level, where we need to perhaps look at how do you give or provide lower load shedding levels, especially to your farm producing sector.
I mean, it's interesting that you say that the Minister of Electricity cannot perform his mandate because of certain maybe bureaucracy, I will put it in that way, and you're calling on the president. But, let's have a picture. I would like you to give us a picture of what this means, this crisis. What does it mean for individuals, for businesses, and how are people impacted? We know that there might be job losses, but can you paint a picture for us on what this would mean for everyone in South Africa?
Yeah, it's disastrous. Remember, it's not just the food producing sector that suffers. It's also all the other sectors, the mining sector, the motor manufacturing sector, your small businesses. You can just imagine, you're a small business, you need to operate your business, your restaurant, and now you sit with load shedding level 6. We were promised by the Minister of Electricity and all the presidency that load shedding will be soon something of the past. But now they can't even give us a guarantee that load shedding level 6 will be lowered to load shedding level 2 or a more bearable load shedding level. Luckily for us, we've had good rains And that helps a lot with farmers becoming less reliant now on irrigation. But remember now, there's a winter season lying ahead. There's also a summer season lying ahead. And that's when South Africa, enjoys a lot of heat. And that in itself requires a lot of irrigation. And if you don't have electricity, it means you can lose your entire crop due to heat waves and so forth. So it's urgent that our president, together with our various ministers, remember we've got a minister of energy, we've got a minister of public enterprises responsible for ESCOM, minister of energy is responsible for getting private enterprises on board to supply electricity through solar means and so forth. And then you've got this newly appointed minister of electricity. So you've got three people already that must lead the charge against load shedding. But very little has come of their efforts, and that's a big concern for us.
All right, I want to look at the future. If none of these persons are able to solve these problems, I'm gonna use Nigeria as an example. For decades now, manufacturing companies have gotten used to sourcing alternative forms of electricity generation. Generators are a huge deal here in Nigeria, and if you look across the manufacturing companies here in Nigeria, even the ones from South Africa, they invest a lot in the electricity generators. Do you think that this might be South Africa's near future, where they depend less on the likes of ESCOM and instead look out for other ways that they can generate electricity to ensure that their businesses keep running? And so tell us about other possible ways that manufacturing companies can mitigate this impending disaster in South Africa.
I cannot hear you very clearly. It seems to me it's a bit of a break on the line. But be it as it may, I think Nigeria is in a much better position in that it has a massive oil reserve. And I don't know to what extent your own businesses benefit from the oil reserves that you have. Unfortunately for South Africa, we have to import oil from the rest of the world. And the price of oil depends on the exchange rate, the dollar exchange rate. And we've seen a massive spike in the price of oil and diesel, especially diesel and petrol. That was last year. Since 2015, the price of petrol went up by 100%. Price of diesel went up by almost 200%. Yes, and it fluctuates all the time. But we also have seen a massive spike in the price of electricity. So those are issues that businesses that want to invest in South Africa, want to invest on the continent of Africa, they're going to think twice before they come here. And they would rather go to a place where there's a steady supply of electricity, where there's a social order, where there's law and order, and where there is a possibility for them to make a profit.
Very valid points, that you've raised there, Mr. Van der Rijt. But very quickly, do you foresee that these businesses that are hesitant about coming to South Africa might potentially in the future look towards generating their own electricity? Do you think that that's the direction that South Africa might be headed?
Indeed, that's already happening. In the private sector, we have seen massive investments in own electricity. The problem is the private sector can generate much more electricity, but the transmission of electricity is the bigger challenge, because ESCOM's capacity on its transmission lines are limited. And that's why we as the agriculture sector are engaging with them this afternoon to see to what extent land can be made available to build more transmission lines, because it's one thing to build a massive solar plant, but if you can't transmit that electricity that's been generated over a long distance, then it serves no purpose. Because ultimately that electricity that is being generated needs to get to a client, to a business, to a customer, and to any big business entity. So that's one of the challenges that we face, and we see ourselves as a solution provider. That's why we have these engagements with ESCOM.
All right. It's a sad, picture that has been painted there, and we hope that the Cyril Ramaphosa government understands what's at stake. We've been having conversations on South African energy crisis for months now, and it's not looking good. But Mr. Van der Reed, thank you so much for your time this morning, and we look forward to having you again and speaking with you again.
Pleasure, sir. And I trust and hope that our continent will realize that investment in infrastructure is critical for economic development. Our people require economic development so that we can lift them out of poverty.
Thank you very much. All right. Of course, you know, we take these conversations across the continent, but still in South Africa, 2 South African police officers have been scheduled to appear in a magistrate's court in Ganyesa and Orkney, both in Northwest on Monday, the 8th of May today, actually, after being arrested for stock theft and defeating the ends of justice, respectively. Brigadier Sabata Mogwabone of the South African Police Force, or South African Police Service, I beg your pardon, SAPS, in Northwest, said a 28-year-old police officer attached to Visible Policing and his 24-year-old accomplice are scheduled to face a trial in Ganyesa Magistrates Court on Monday, May 8th, on a charge of stock theft.
According to Mokwobane, the suspect's court appearance stemmed from their arrest on Thursday, the 4th of May 2023, after being discovered in possession of stolen cattle. The cattle were then returned to their rightful owners after being positively identified by brand marks and tags, while the car and trailer were impounded. Now let's take the conversation this morning away from South Africa and head to Kenya, where we have information that Pastor Ezekiel Odero and members of his New Life Prayer Center and church yesterday attended a service defying a police order to close the premises amid his criminal investigation. Pastor Ezekiel and fellow televangelist Paul Mackenzie are under investigation for the Shakahola tragedy in Kilifi County that has seen more than 100 people die from starvation under Mackenzie's religious instruction to starve to see Jesus.
Now, while Odero is being investigated for murder, aiding suicide, abduction, radicalization, genocide, crimes against humanity, child cruelty, fraud, money laundering, and being an accessory to crimes, it seems like it's a never-ending list of crimes that he's been accused of. This morning, we're joined by Duncan Osoro, who is an advocate at Osoro and Osoro Advocates. And he's, of course, the AI on the panel investigating or representing Evangelist Ezekiel on the alleged criminal offenses. He joins us from Mombasa, Kenya. Thanks for joining us, Mr. Osoro.
Good morning.
All right. What exactly is going on here? Because I think it was last week or so, we heard about Pastor Ezekiel being arrested and he was granted bail. Can you clarify that he, of course, went on to hold service when he wasn't meant to?
Yeah, the true fact of what you've stated is that Pastor Ezekiel was arrested on allegations of radicalization, murder, child cruelty, and even indoctrination. But far from the truth. There is another pastor, or alleged pastor, known as Pastor Paul Mackenzie, whose church or place of worship is around 200 kilometers away from our clan's church. What happened is there have been a lot of exhumation of bodies at Shakahola. That's around in Elam County, away from Kilifi County, where Pastor Ezekiel's church is situated. After it was discovered that there exists mass graves in Shakahola, that's Pastor Mackenzie's place. Then now they linked, or the state, having failed to investigate or put in measures to curb such a scenario, they went on a fishing expedition, arresting any pastor that may have come across or near to Pastor Mackenzie. You know, the only connection or connections between Pastor Mackenzie and Ezekiel is that Pastor Ezekiel only bought, not bought, he tried to buy a TV station. And when he realized it was not proper, he went to PAN, the network provider, and asked for it. But now, the truth is, hello?
We're here. We can hear you. Please go ahead.
Yes. Now, the truth is that now, after Pastor Ezekiel was arrested and incarcerated in police custody for 7 days without any charges being brought against him, in the pretext that they are investigating him, we went to court and asked the court that if at all there is any offense committed by Pastor Ezekiel, he should be brought to court and charged properly and avoid pre-trial detention. Our constitution provides that anybody who has been found or suspected to have committed an offense has a right to bail and bond. That was our main argument. But then now we have another law in Kenya called the Prevention of Terrorism Act, which can provide that you can hold a suspect for as much as 360 days to bring him to court or charge him. Now, after the expiry of 7 days, the state could not find any offense to charge Pastor Ezekiel. They could not link him to the Shakahola massacre. Now they came again and said, we want to charge him with murder. Now we need another 30 days to investigate him. That's when now the court said this is an infringement on his rights. If you have any other investigations to do, if you have any other report, if you have any other charges to bring against him, bring him them today. If not, I grant him a bond of 3 million Kenya shillings or a cash bill of 1.5 million. He was released. Contrary to the media reports, contrary to the allegations, there was no order closing the church. Kenya is a democratic state ruled by the law. We have a robust judicial system.
So are you saying that, the speculation about the church being closed is merely a speculation and that there was no formal order given? I'd like you to please clarify on that.
There was no formal order, madam. There was no formal order. What happened is after he was arrested, there was a verbal communication from the police that now we are closing the church. That is not the proper way of doing things in Kenya or the law or in any other law-abiding nation.
All right. Is there any information on, that you maybe can share with us, on the type of teachings from Pastor Ezekiel? Because Pastor Paul Mackenzie, is accused of indoctrination and, having the level of, some type of religious teachings that has led people to commit suicide. And we're talking about more than 100 people that have been found dead now. Do Pastor Paul Mackenzie and Pastor Ezekiel have similar teachings or similar ways of preaching their gospel?
There can be nothing far from the truth. Pastor Ezekiel's teachings are all over the world. He has a tele-evangelist TV station that broadcasts all over the world. His church does not consist of members, but worshippers. It is not a denomination that you can say it is inclined to Catholic. It's not inclined to SDA. It's not inclined to Muslims. Anybody who believes in God comes there, and it's in broad daylight. Nothing goes on at night, apart from maybe prayers. He does not encourage fasting that you are going to meet Jesus, but it is spiritual. This is a church that I can equate to the late Monroe. We have T.D. Jakes. Those are the teachings that Pastor Ezekiel does. In fact, yesterday we went there. We were there very early in the morning after we got information that the police have arrived and they barricaded the gate to his compound. Lest we forget, that compound is not only a church. That compound consists of a school, consists of a hotel, consists of about 3 restaurants. There's a petrol station. That's his residence. Now they are purporting to close down the whole compound where that the pastors live. Yes?
Yes, we can hear you.
The teachings are as per the Bible and for those who believe in the Christian faith.
All right.
Or those who believe, yes.
So there was a video that, made its way to the internet where the members of the church as well were maybe protesting in some way. They categorically stated that there was no order given and saying that they will hold the government responsible for the lives that have not been saved as a result of the church being shut down, and the people who don't get some sort of freedom. So there were a lot of claims that were being made in that video. The question now is, what is the way forward? You're saying that they haven't followed the rules, they haven't followed the constitutional provision. So what is the way forward? What is to be expected from this case as regards Pastor Ezekiel?
What I'm saying, madam, is this. And the Constitution of Kenya 2010 provides for a very wide range of rights and fundamental freedoms to be enjoyed by each and every individual, not only a Kenyan, but any other individual that is in Kenya. And Article 32 provides for freedom of conscience, religion, association, that you are free to join any religion of your liking. And now, in Kenya, to limit a freedom or a fundamental right, then there must be the rule of law to be followed. Here is somebody, probably a police officer, who has not even gone to court and says, now, we have arrested Pastor Ezekiel. We are closing the church without proper investigations, without a court order, just verbal declarations. It cannot work. Now, the video you've seen there, we were there, my fellow counsel and myself, after they had barricaded the gate to the church. And then now we were asking, give us a formal order and we will advise pastor to close down.
All right.
Give us a communication from the authorities, written authority, written legal document that the church must be closed down. There was none. And then now we say,
Duncan, unfortunately, I mean, we're talking about more than 100 lives here. So it's expected that there would be people who are really, really sensitive and really, really triggered by the whole conversation and, would want people punished. And so maybe that's where Pastor Ezekiel is being, pulled into the whole conversation. Maybe not, but it's still left for the Kenyan authorities and, and police to investigate properly. And we would like to have you back again, for further updates on this if they emerge. But for now, thank you very much for joining us this morning. We will speak with you again pretty soon.
For maybe 30 seconds, kindly, the more than 100 lives were found at Shakahola and not in Mavueni Church where Ezekiel preaches. And before this, even before this now, the picture you are seeing there is not in Pastor Ezekiel's compound. We invited the media. The compound was open to the media and any authorities to investigate and even search for any grave. None was found at Pastor Ezekiel's compound. These bodies were found in Shakahola, more than 200 kilometers away from Ezekiel's place. And it's very unfortunate that the media, when they are talking about Shakahola, they link it to Ezekiel. Shakahola belongs to Mackenzie, not Ezekiel whatsoever. It is there, it's open for anybody to come and search or even dig up any grave in that compound.
All right. I think your point has been properly made. Thank you very much. We will be speaking with you again. Thanks for your time.
Much obliged.
All right. And now from Kenya, we move across the continent, but now in the world of sports to share with you the latest stories over there. Stay with us.
Na 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 na. Thanks for staying tuned to Breakfast Central. It's time for sports updates. I'm Samson Oloide. We begin with handball, where Egyptian side Akli won the Men's African Super Cup for the third time in the club's history on Sunday when they defeated fellow country club Zamalek 27 to 24 points in Cairo to reach this year's IHF Super Club in Saudi Arabia. The Red Devils led the first half 14 to 9 points to head to the locker rooms with a comfortable 5-goal advantage. The second half was a hard-fought affair as the White Knights narrowed the gap to only 1 goal, 24-23, before Akli were able to stretch their lead in the final minutes to secure the title. Akli were crowned Egyptian champions for the first time in 5 years last month before clinching the Egypt Cup to complete the domestic double. In the women's game, Angola's Petro do Luanda defeated fellow countryside to win the Handball African Women's Super Cup as well. Away from there to athletics, South African sprint sensation Akani Simbine finished second in the men's 100 meters final at the Atlanta City Games in a time of 10.01 seconds. Simbine finished behind Jamaica's Oblique Seville, who won the race in 9.99 seconds. Akani Simbine edged Britain's Zanel Hughes, who finished in an identical time for his season's best in third place. The South African sprinter had raced against Hughes in the heat, losing by 0.02 of a second, and was neck-to-neck with the Briton before a photo finish in the final saw him peep his rival. Away from there to football matters on the continent, the Confederation of African Football has imposed a fine of $10,000 on Yanga SC for using lasers and fireworks during their CAF Confederation Cup game against Nigeria's Rivers United in Tanzania. Yanga have also been fined $25,000 for the bus incident that occurred and as reported by Rivers United. The Nigerian club side had lodged a complaint that their team bus had been broken into and sprayed with toxic chemicals, and there was also a theft of $5,250. CAF has also warned Yanga about security concerns, especially in the other games left. Yanga has 3 days to appeal these sanctions. Away from there, Italian Serie A champions Napoli edged Fiorentina by a lone goal courtesy of Nigerian striker Victor Osimhen's 74th minute penalty as the Napolitans celebrated a first league title in 33 years. Osimhen's 22nd league goal was a historic one as he eclipsed AC Milan legend George Okonkwo as the most prolific African in the Italian Serie A history with 47 goals in 78 games as against West's 46 goals in 114 games. The Nigerian striker has scored 28 goals in 35 appearances for Napoli this season.
Look at the crowd, look at the noise. This means a lot to them, and it's good to come back home to win and seal our place as a real champion. And I'm happy to contribute with a goal. And I think to be able to come home and win in front of our amazing fans is something we will never forget in a rush. And I'm really happy about this.
22 league goals and counting there for the Nigerian striker in the Italian Serie A, and is in prime position to emerge as the highest goal scorer in the Italian league. Well, to Premier League we go. Arsenal showed their mettle at Newcastle United to keep the title race alive with a 2-0 win at St James's Park. Martin Odegaard fired Arsenal in front from 30 yards before a Fabian Schär own goal wrapped it up in the second half. The win leaves the Gunners a point behind Pep Guardiola's side, who still have a game in hand. Meanwhile, a hauler from David De Gea gifted West Ham United victory over Manchester United to boost their chances of Premier League survival, while dealing a blow to the Red Devils' top 4 hopes. De Gea let a Tim Said Berama efforts from distance slip through his grasp to pull the Hammers in front midway through the first half. The win moved David Moyes' side 7 points clear of the relegation zone with a superior goal difference to all the sides below them. And you have the table talking about the league standings. Manchester City at top of that standings with 82 points from 34 games, while Arsenal is second, 81 points from 35 games. Newcastle United, despite the loss, still sit third with 65 points from 34 games. And Manchester United, with that loss to West Ham United, are rooted fourth with 63 points from 34 games. Needless to say, it will be a fight to finish for top 4 finish. It's back to you, Olive.
Thank you for throwing it back to me.
I don't know what's going on.
It's very interesting to see what's happening there on the table. I mean, Manchester United. Osagi, how do you feel about Manchester United?
I mean, I'm ashamed of them. Yeah, I'll be honest. And so it's for the first time on television, I would say shame on Manchester United. But of course, Manchester United and Arsenal are going to be winning the same number of Premier League titles this season, which is 0. Manchester City, of course, at this point, should be crowned champions already. I don't think there's any need to waste anyone's time.
Manchester City, you mean?
Yes,
Manchester City, you mean?
Yeah,
Okay, I thought you
yeah,
said
at this
Manchester
point,
United.
because they have one more game, to go. And Arsenal, of course, is already trailing, with I think 1 or 2 points. But once again, shame on Manchester United. I have no words for them.
And Arsenal.
Good luck to them.
Because, at the end of the day, everyone thought, a number of people thought that Arsenal was going to top the league.
I didn't.
You didn't. To be honest, you had been trolling them and you had said that if they mistakenly do not win the league, they should be ready. Because you will laugh.
You can't entirely fault them. I don't think, prior to the season, the goal for Arsenal was to win the league. It was probably a top 4 finish. So in that regard, you want to say they've achieved their targets with a top 4 finish. But considering how, dominant they were for the better part of the season, there would definitely be, that sour taste left in their mouths concerning how they allowed the title, race slip out of their grasp.
There's always, this always happens. They always change the goalpost every time when it seems to have slipped out of their hands. Because I'm sure they were certain they were going to win the league. And now they're talking about, they're talking about top 4. I remember someone was always talking about longest run at the top for Arsenal from any other Premier League. Shame on you people.
Well, it's a marathon, that's why it's a 38-game format.
There's no trophy for marathon. Thanks a lot for stopping by. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you so much.
All right. Now, of course, on the Monday morning, we've had very interesting conversations so far. Let's take you through some of those conversations and, of course, share with you what's coming next here on Breakfast Central.
Went to South Africa where we talked about the worsening food crisis, the impact of load shedding, and what the way forward is.
And of course, more on the Shakahola tragedy. Ezekiel Odero and members defy police order. Well, more on that massacre in Kenya.
And Victor Osimhen becomes top scoring African in league history, getting a special congratulatory message from the account of the president-elect, Bola Ahmed Tinubu. I saw that. Well, there's more to come this morning, so let's share with you what's coming up next. Appeal Court to unveil election tribunal panel starting today.
And over 800 Nigerian evacuees arrive at the Federal Capital Territory.
Right, we also have Rema makes history as he bags Guinness World Record with Baby Calm Down. We'll be right back.
You wake up to a lot of stories about Africa.
But this is where you get the stories.
Where we explore different angles because we understand our stories.
There's that passion when it's your perspective and not a distant perception.
I know you hear it a lot, but it's true. Nobody can tell your story better than you.
That's what we do.
All day, every day,
On News Central TV.
our African stories by Africans for Africans. News Central TV, Africa's #1 storyteller, has come with the best of both worlds. With a combination of news app and live TV, we ensure that you keep track of the latest headlines, breaking news, and in-depth analysis from professional journalists from around the continent. Download the News Central TV app on Android and iOS and get started today. Don't forget to follow us on News Central's social media platforms. News Central, Africa first.
News Central ní ẹ̀ ń wò.
Once again, welcome to Breakfast Headlines on News Central Television. Now, let's begin in the west of the continent, where Nigeria's opposition party, the People's Democratic Party, the PDP, has accused the All Progressive Congress, the APC, of plotting to influence the outcome of the lawsuit before the court as the Presidential Election Lawsuit Tribunal's much anticipated sitting is about to begin. He claimed that the overwhelming evidence against the APC's candidate and the refusal of the majority of Nigerians to accept the result of the election on the 25th of February caused the APC to be concerned about the tribunal's alleged outcome. The declaration of ended February 25 presidential election is being contested by the Labour Party, Peter Obi, the People's Democratic Party, and Atiku Abubakar, and some other contestants of the election. Asiwaju Bola Tinubu was proclaimed the winner of the election on the 1st of March of this year by the head of the Independent National Electoral Commission, Professor Mahmood Yakubu, because his party received the most votes cast. Meanwhile, a MAX airplane carrying passengers from Adamawa State in the northeastern part of Nigeria crash-landed at Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport in the nation's capital, Abuja, on Sunday. According to reports, there were fears when the MAX airplane crash-landed at the Abuja airport after the tire allegedly caught fire. The eyewitnesses claimed that rescue personnel responded quickly to douse the fire caused by the ruptured tire. Meanwhile, the airline in a statement revealed that there was fortunately no fatality as passengers were safely evacuated while the aircraft was successfully towed out of the runway. Still in the country, Nigerian police say it has rescued 58 persons who were abducted and held captive by the criminal gangs in central Kogi State, while one victim died during the operation. According to police spokeswoman Josephine Ade, the Federal Capital Territory Police Command freed 58 hostages who had been taken prisoner in Kogi State's Gegu local government area's Udulu Forest. The rescue, according to police, was a part of an ongoing collaborative operation involving other security agencies, local vigilantes, and hunters. Kidnapping is one of the major security issues in the last decade. And in Central Africa, authorities in the Democratic Republic of Congo have disclosed that 6 persons were killed over the weekend when a diamond mine collapsed in the Diboko region of the central Kasai province. The vice governor of the province, Gaston Nkole, said the people killed in the disaster were unauthorized miners who had entered a prohibited mining region. The vice governor stated that despite authorities' safety-related mining prohibition, unauthorized miners have been visiting the site at night to look for diamonds. He also added that the cause of the collapse is being looked into. Still in the country, nearly 400 persons have now died as a result of floods and landslides in the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo. This is according to an administrator of the Kalehe territory, Thomas Bakenga, who disclosed that at least 394 bodies have been found following last week's flood in the region. Now, he noted that 120 dead bodies had been found floating on Lake Kivu around Ijwi, an island in the middle of the enormous volcanic lake, in addition to the 142 bodies found at Bushushu and 132 at Nyamukubi. Now, heavy rainfall in the Kalehe region of South Kivu province on Thursday caused rivers to overflow, causing landslides that engulfed the villages of Bushushu and Nyamukubi. And out to the east of the continent, refugees have crossed the border into Ethiopia as a result of a continued violence in Sudan, with some of them expressing happiness at their safety. Now, thousands of Sudan's inhabitants have traveled into the neighboring countries of Egypt and Ethiopia to escape the ongoing fatal military conflicts between the Sudanese army and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, which began in mid-April. The violence that began on the 15th of April has claimed the lives of at least 700 individuals, the majority of whom were civilians.
One from Syria after 6 years, and this one in Sudan after 8 years. So I will try to find a place. We don't know the situation. Usually you see safety, you go there, but then this situation is not under control.
Our safety and life comes first. We can't be thinking about the things that we have left behind, no? Plus, they search you at the road when you come here. So if you have valuable stuff, they take it. So it's not worth it.
The situation is really horrible. The gunfire everywhere, and you expecting to be a victim at any time. However, also there is no necessity we are lacking necessities such as water, food.
Ethiopia situation also it is not.
Now, the top humanitarian representative of the United Nations, Martin Griffiths, has arrived in Saudi Arabia for peace negotiations between the warring generals in Sudan as gunfights and airstrikes erupted in the country's capital at the start of the fourth week of combat. Since fighting broke out between army and paramilitary troops on the 15th of April, in a nation with a history of political unrest, numerous truce agreements have been declared and swiftly broken. Griffith's visit is intended to discuss Sudan-related humanitarian matters. According to a UN statement, there have been several warnings of a potential catastrophic humanitarian disaster in the country, as thousands of people, largely civilians, have been injured and hundreds of people have died in the violence. Well, that's all we have for you on the news at this hour. Let's bring back Olive and Osalgie for the rest of the show.
Thank you very much. Blessings. Prayers for peace in Sudan and in every other part of the continent where, people might be going through really, really tough times. Also in Rwanda, we, of course, have continued to see more figures from the natural disaster there that, of course, more than 100 people have died. Prayers up for the African continent. All right. We, of course, will take a short break now. When we come back, let's move straight into the newspapers this morning and share with you the major stories making headlines across the continent this morning.
The newspapers for the second hour from Nigeria, looking at the Daily Trust newspaper. On the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper, we can see the big story talking about, of course, the election and its drama. Or do I say election brouhaha? Aspirants move against Tinubu's anointed candidate. This is, of course, referring to the speakership. Abbas talks about what attracted me to president-elect. We were not consulted according to Wase's camp. Endorsements, mere speculation according to Gaji. Betara declares today, North Central spoils for fight. NAFDAC raises alarm over importation of banned pesticides from UK. Osalgie, initially, I think it was sometime last week, there were conversations about imported noodles. Now we're hearing imported banned pesticides from the UK. Why is it that it seems like, Nigeria has become some sort of a dump for them when they feel like something is not working in a country, a product is being banned? How is it very easy for this to seep through our borders into the country? Then they'll raise alarm about it, that we have banned pesticides, or we have, these products. Shouldn't this, reflect on the strength of our quality control in terms of our consumption and production? I'm a little confused.
So yes, our customs first of all, and then I think working also with Standards Organization of Nigeria,
exactly,
NAFDAC, and some of all of those bodies. Yeah, they should be the ones, but it's not just on consumables. It also is with regards vehicles that are being used, refrigerators, household items. A lot of it. I think every now and then you get to see a survey on car products that are being used in the United States or used in Dubai, used everywhere else, and look at the safety standards for those cars. But that same car in Nigeria would have a totally different safety standard. Right. I mean, the same product, the same whatever brand, the exact same car, but the ones that you see here in Nigeria do not have the exact safety standards as the ones that you see in other countries. So it's really, so like you said, it tells a lot about the checks and safety standards that we have for the Nigerian consumer.
Speaking about safety standards, I just found out recently that there are parts in the UK where if you drive a car older than, I think, 2008 model, you'll be fined, Osalgie. Yeah. How many people's cars in Nigeria dates back to 2004?
My car can't cross our border.
And they're doing that because they're considering the amount of greenhouse gas and the emissions that your car is producing because it is an older model.
Yeah.
So there's so much work that needs to be done here.
Absolutely.
Anyway, still on the front page we have here, man beats son to death for stealing 1 mudu of millet. Wow. Learn from Sudan experience, NSCIA tells Nigerians. 144 passengers unhurt as Max airplane crash lands in Abuja. Many flights cancelled. Safety Bureau probes incident. I'm glad that they're probing. Tribunal begins hearing Atiku Obi 3 other petitions today. Mixed feelings in Kano over Kwankwaso's statement on Sanusi's dethronement and 77 trillion naira debt fuel subsidy. 3 other issues Tinubu will inherit from Buhari. And that's all we can take this morning on the Daily Trust. Let's head away to the next paper.
All right, and now the Punch newspapers this morning, it says the asset declaration. CCB tells Tinubu and others to submit forms before May 29th. I'm sure Nigerians will be eager to see what exactly is in the president-elect's assets declaration form, and the things that will be listed. We would like to see. Asset declaration ongoing in 36 states. No swearing in without form submission, says CCB. Bureau says defaulters risk removal from office. 40 Ogun politicians obtain forms. Also, fuel-laden tanker crashes, grounds Lagos-Ibadan expressway traffic. We can also find here federal government airlifts 888 Nigerians from Egypt, plans more evacuations. Congratulations once again to Victor Osimhen, from a Lagos street hawker to Syria A goal king. Passengers stranded as flights grounded as the federal government shut Abuja runway with the almost a disaster yesterday. Subsidy removal. Nigerians may spend 8 trillion naira on petrol in 6 months. And also protests as Northwest backs Akpabio for Senate presidency. We can also see here from Alison Desiani Madueke saying, my ordeal with aggressive breast cancer. These are the big ones that we can find on the Punch newspapers this morning. Remember, the tribunal starts today in Nigeria, and we have a lot of drama coming your way.
All right, very quickly, the final paper, Daily News in Zimbabwe. We are watching them, says ZANU-PF. Party wants its 2023 candidates anew as polls loom. Schools on high alert for cholera, so be on the watch out. We also have deadlock, Shesham hold high-flying Boso on page 16. And final story, Ada Ehi blesses Zim with powerful concerts. All right, that's all the stories we can take this morning. We'll go on a quick break, and when we come back, we'll have our top stories to discuss this morning on Breakfast Central.
Skyline's a byline you watch. How we define and listen when we speak, you better listen, cause it's your turn. Now it's your turn.
Glow Data, your front row seat to the world of entertainment. Nobody does video streaming better. Dial *777# now.
kuna kallon News Central TV.
Welcome once again. The stage is now set for President of the Court of Appeal, Justice Monica Bonan Dongbang Mensem, to formally unveil members of the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal that would adjudicate on all petitions filed against the declaration of Bola Ahmed Tinubu and the All Progressives Congress as winners of the disputed 2023 presidential election. The unveiling of the tribunal members slated for today, 8th of May, would be carried out at the Court of Appeal headquarters in Abuja.
Justice Dongbang Mensem, since the presidential election result was made public, kept the names of the tribunal members to her chest to avoid undue influence on them. The unveiling of the tribunal is coming on the heels of the Action Alliance AA and its presidential candidate in the election, Solomon David Okanigwan, notifying the tribunal of their intentions to withdraw their petition against the declaration of Tinubu as Nigeria's president-elect. Joining us now is legal practitioner Ini Behe Effiong to speak more on this. Good morning and thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
All right. I'd like you to speak to, the importance of this tribunal, seeing as it might, be one of the most important tribunals Nigeria has had. It's 180 days within which this matter must be concluded. And interestingly, the fact and, all of this is going to be heard at the Court of Appeal, which is typically not the norm. So speak to us about, the importance of this and, what is to be expected.
Thank you. Well, just to clarify, the petitions have always been heard at the Court of Appeal. That is presidential election. Because for the purpose of litigating over the outcome of presidential election or determining cases related to any of office of president, the Court of Appeal is the court of first instance. And then from there, any aggrieved party can appeal to the Supreme Court. Now, in this case, the petitions have been filed, issues have been joined, replies have been filed. What the matter will be coming up today essentially is what we call the pre-hearing session, which is essentially a preliminary proceedings where certain matter will be attended to, certain expert applications that may have been filed. It is also an opportunity for the tribunal or the Court of Appeal, in this case, the panel of the Court of Appeal, to state a scheduling order regarding the order in which the petitions will be heard. By that, I mean the timetable for hearing of the petitions. They will now determine when each of the various petitioners will present their cases, the number of days that will be available to them. They will also resolve whether there are documents that the parties are agreeable on the ones that the parties are disputing. So these are essentially what the proceedings of today is meant for. It is not for the hearing of the petition itself. The date for the hearing of the petition itself will be determined after the pre-hearing session. And as required by the Electoral Act, the pre-hearing session has to come before the actual petition.
All right. Now, let's also talk about time. And I remember that Olisa Agbakoba SAN, was one of those who spoke against, this very, very long period of a presidential election tribunal, taking almost forever, and it seems like the president-elect, would even be sworn in before the tribunal is finally over. So let's also talk about, the timing. And are you one of those who's uncomfortable with the amount of time that this is taking for a tribunal to be started and concluded before the swearing in of the president-elect?
I'm uncomfortable with it, but that is what we have to deal with until the Constitution is amended. It is a constitutional matter. It is not a matter that can be resolved by policy or administrative intervention. I say that because by virtue of Section 285 of the Constitution, the Court of Appeal has, and even election tribunals across the country, they have a timeline of 180 days. That is 6 months within which to determine petitions. Now, that timeline was set in an era where the use of technology had little or no place in our elections, where a petitioner was required to call witnesses from all polling units across the country to prove his case. But today we have the BVAS, we have the IREF, which has basically reduced the volume of work that a petitioner has. As a matter of fact, under the new Electoral Act, is a provision that now says that where a fact can be proved through the tendering of documents, you don't need to necessarily rely on oral evidence to establish that fact. You can simply rely on that fact by tendering of documents. Before now, the law has been that if you simply tender documents and you don't call witnesses to speak to each part of that document, you are dumping the document. But it appears the National Assembly has now changed the law on that. It is left to be seen how the courts will approve these legislative interventions through the Electoral Act. But I do agree that it makes more sense to have someone sworn in after cases challenging the legality of the declaration of that person is determined after the legal processes are exhausted. But to say that that can be achieved before May 29 is simply wishful thinking at this point. It is just not practicable. One, because as I said, we are just having a pre-hearing session today. After the pre-hearing session, a time frame will be set for a petitioner to prove his case, and then we will now go to the respondents. They will file addresses. The panel will now sit and fix a date. And guess what? Even when the Court of Appeal has reached a decision, the Electoral Act says that the person declared shall remain in office until he has exhausted his right of appeal. Meaning that, let's assume that the election of Tinubu is nullified by the Court of Appeal. He will still remain in office until he has exhausted his right of appeal at the Supreme Court. I feel this is wrong. I feel the National Assembly should be patriotic to amend the Constitution to address this. We have seen how these things are done, in what we call the Senate class, and even our broader African countries like Kenya and several other countries. I personally don't see the need to have a two-stage litigation, electoral litigation in presidential election. All matters relating to the election or the legality of declaration by INEC at the presidential level should begin and end at the Supreme Court. I don't see the need to go through the Court of Appeal. I do not see the need for that. I believe that the Supreme Court should be the court of first and last resort. But in the alternative, we can have a constitutional court. We can have a constitutional court that will be able to expedite this matter, because these justices, the 5 justices who are going to be named today, they are drawn from different divisions across the country. And guess what? Part of the problem is that the cases they are tending to now have to suffer. I personally have a couple of cases across the country that have been affected because the judges who are supposed to preside over those cases have been called upon to serve in election tribunals across the country. So we should have a way of streamlining these things, shortening the process, and also building confidence in the citizens. So I entirely support the call for a constitutional amendment. I agree with Mr. Olisa Abagoba saying that it is important to hear these cases before swearing in. But as of today, that is just not practicable. So we have to deal with what we have.
All right. So let's talk about, what the prayers of the petitioners, are in this case, as well as what the possible outcomes of this tribunal would be.
Well, the interesting part about this election cycle is that there are 4, to my knowledge, I think that there are 4 presidential petitions. I just heard from your report that two of the petitioners have indicated interest to withdraw their petitions. They have the right to withdraw. It may be on terms or without terms, So if some persons have decided, the APM are also, or APP, and one other party has indicated, if they want to withdraw, they can withdraw, so that the Court of Appeal can focus on the cases brought by the Labour Party and the PDP. Now, in the two petitions, the two principal petitions of the Peter Obi and Atiku, they are seeking very similar or identical reliefs, which to an extent both cannot be granted. For example, the declaratory relief they are seeking pertaining to them being declared the winner of the election. There is no way both of them can succeed on that species of their claim. It is simply not possible. So what will now happen is that the court will, I believe it is the same panel that will hear both petitions. I think that will even make it easier since the issues are identical, the line of evidence may also be similar. It is important to have the same panel hear them so that we don't have conflicting decisions. So I anticipate, I suspect strongly that it is the same panel that will hear both petitions. Now, as I said, there is no way both of them can be declared president. So what would happen is that by the time the panel has heard evidence from the two cases, they will determine whether that particular aspect of their reliefs are grantable or not. And if they are grantable, which of the petitioners should be entitled to it. That is one. Now, the one that the both petitioners are agreeable is the alternative relief. That is in the event that the Court of Appeal does not find evidence to warrant declaring either of them as president-elect or the duly elected president, then that the election should be nullified on grounds of substantial non-compliance. I think they are agreeable on that. The other aspect of their prayers is that Tinubu should be disqualified, one in respect of his forfeiture in the US, the other, of course, in several grounds have been raised challenging Tinubu's eligibility to run for office of president. Again, I hope that the courts will examine these issues on the merit and give judgment that Nigerians can relate with. So I will be waiting to see how all this plays out. It's going to be a very interesting petition. It's going to be very, very interesting litigation. I'm also hoping that we can have the hearings televised and broadcast live for Nigerians to sit in the comfort of their homes and watch the proceedings and make their logical and draw logical inferences. I think that will go a long way to strengthen the process, to democratize the process, and to also give credibility and transparency to the process. If people can watch the proceedings on their own and then see the stream of evidence that is being tendered, the evidence that is being adduced, and see the arguments that are being canvassed on the various issues that are subject of litigation at the courts, it will go a long way to strengthen the confidence of Nigerians in the outcome of the petitions. So I hope that, my Lord, the Honorable President of the Court of Appeal will look into that issue.
Now let's also talk about, some people have argued that, with regards the eligibility of Bola Ahmed Tinubu to contest, one of the things, that might, not work in his favor or work in the favor of the petitioners is the time frame, with which the crimes he's accused of were committed. There's that 10-year, I think a 10-year time frame, that would be mentioned. So can you quickly share your thoughts on that one? And then when people... In the last
no, that is not...
let me just finish.
I'm
you
not...
can go on.
Go on.
All right, so you can correct me if you will. And then some people have also mentioned that the judiciary, at this point has a lot of weight on its shoulders, basically, to prove that it is on the side of Nigerians and on the side of truth and on the side of justice. Do you believe that the Nigerian judiciary would be able to pull through and be able to carry that weight perfectly and do what is, is expected of it?
From your first question, I'm not sure if that argument really will fly at the end of the day. We just have to wait and see how the courts will determine that provision of the Constitution. I think 146 or so on the question of eligibility, because that 10-year rule in the Constitution is in respect of conviction related that is the rule is stated. There's a distinct subsection, the period of conviction and to the period of contesting an election. It appears it is in the later provision that this aspect, this species of claim or petition is founded. So I'm not sure if that timeline, the 10-year rule, is going to avail the respondents in this case. But I want to hear the arguments. I want to see the ruling of the court on it. Again, I must caution that, as I said, there are two distinct species relating to criminal culpability under the Constitution as an indices or an indicia of disqualification. That one pertains to by conviction in respect of violation of the code of conduct, which is not what this case is about. The other seems to be generic in nature without a time frame, which appears to be what these petitions are predicated on. Now, regarding the second aspect, your second question, I'm a lawyer, I cannot be enlightening the judiciary in the media, but I agree with you that there are legitimate concerns. Many Nigerians have lost confidence in the courts. We don't need to pretend about that. What we should hope for is that my lords who are also Nigerians who live in the society with us should feel the pulse of the nation. They should be mindful that the eyes of the nation are upon them, that the ears of history is listening to see how they will approach these cases. I particularly, I want to see how the issue of the introduction of technology in our election will be addressed.
Very important, point you've highlighted. We've run out of time. We have like 30 seconds. But can you quickly tell us about the possibility of this being streamed live? Because even as the tribunal is starting today, there have been calls by Nigerians and even the petitioners for this to be streamed live. Do you think that this is possible?
It's 50-50 really, because I know that a certain constituency within the judiciary is quite conservative. They may not want to allow that to happen. But I hope that it will happen. It is not a difficult thing to do. Right. It is just to set the ground rules for that to happen. I hope that the president of the Court of Appeal, or alternatively, the presiding justice of the panel, we don't know who the members are going to be, will make that possible. But any of the parties can also bring a formal application before the panel of the Court of Appeal to see whether that will be granted.
Yeah, the presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party has certainly called for this. But we have a few hours and we'll find out shortly. They're already at the complex and, the tribunal should start shortly. Thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to having you again when we have further information on this.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Right. Morning. And of course, let's move on. Of course, once again, the weight is on the shoulders of the judiciary. As Nigeria decides, like I said earlier, a lot of Nigerians have lost faith in the executive, lost faith in the legislative, and now let's see if the judiciary will be able to hold forth, with the faith that Nigerians have. Now let's get into Nigerians evacuated from Sudan. Recently, of course, a lot of Nigerians have arrived in the country, and of course, the government has commended, many Nigerians have also commended the government for their successful evacuation from Sudan. This was as hundreds, of course, arrived in Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport in Abuja via a Max airline and an Asman airline from Aswan International Airport in Egypt. Of course, our reporter Amadin Uyi shares with us more details concerning this.
The joy and excitement was evident on their faces as they walked into the arrival hall of the special wing of the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport. Many of them were short of words. Their evacuation, a story too good to be true.
I don't have the words because I'm so happy. I'm happy that I'm back and I escaped, and I'm hoping that every other person there is safe too.
Actually, I'm really happy. Cannot wait to see my family.
Right now, just a feeling of relief to be finally back home after all that we went through.
While some filled their biodata forms for capturing by Nigerian authorities, others took time to describe their experiences prior to their evacuation.
The experience, it was so bitter because of the incident that happened suddenly. So the experience right from when the incident started, so if to be narrated to the end of today and tomorrow, we can't be able to finish. It's hard to put that in words, but all I can say is that this is the most thrilling experience of my life.
It wasn't easy at all. We spent days trying to get bus to leave Khartoum. Then we were in another village for like 3 days. We went to the border. We slept there for 3 days. Then we were in Egypt. We spent, I think, 2 days too before we were able to. It wasn't easy. Bathrooms, drinking water. We were just eating and drinking anything we could find.
It's a hard journey. Almost 12 days. We're on journey, sleep outside with nothing like food, something like that. Today you will get food, maybe tomorrow you won't get it. Even the water we used to take, not always you will take good water. Some of the water we always take it because we're very thirsty just to survive.
Officials on ground, while admitting that the evacuation was no easy feat, as they were stretched beyond measure, they assured the evacuees of government's commitment to ensuring that all stranded Nigerians are returned back to the country.
It wasn't easy. I slept on the mat with the deputy ambassador and the ambassador, Nigerian ambassador and deputy ambassador, for 4 days on the floor at the port. It wasn't a pleasant experience, but we thank God we made it.
One promise we gave Mr. President and our principals, the ministers, is that no Nigerian who wants to come back home will be left behind. And even beyond the main phase of the evacuation, we are leaving behind a mop-up service that will make sure that anybody who happens to trickle in to the borders who is a Nigerian, we will mop up and make sure that they are brought back home safely.
Available data from Nigeria's government revealed that as of May the 7th, a total of 1,471 evacuees have so far been returned back to the country. Amadine Uyi, reporting for News Central.
And we, of course, gladly welcome those Nigerians back. We hope that they can, find their way home back to their families as we wait for more Nigerians to, of course, arrive the country from Sudan. But most importantly, pray for peace and encourage, more negotiations for peace in Sudan. Now let's move away from talking politics and war and some of all of that. Let's see what's going on in entertainment. We've got Igbo Blondie joining us next.
Africa needs its own storytellers, people who understand the continent because they're from it. People who know that news is more than just a conversation starter, it's our stories. Because these stories run deeper than headlines and segments. It's about digging deeper to get the facts and telling the human side of every single story, not just the echoes from foreign headlines and perspectives. It's time to take back our narratives and share them in our voices. The birth of Africa's New Age reporting, and this is where it begins, right here at News Central TV, with stories that put Africa first.
Well, of course, if you see my face, that means the entertainment world has been buzzing, and the Igbo Blondie is ready to serve you the entertainment dish on Breakfast Central. Now, let's take off with the Domitila trademark saga that had Ann Njemanze and Zeb Ejiro at each other's throats for some time now. Now, it's quite interesting that the lead character of a movie thought it wise to have a trademark battle with the producer of the movie over the ownership of the brand Domitila, demanding 50 million naira in compensation. Anyways, last week it was announced that Zeb Ejiro won the trademark case at the tribunal. The tribunal has cancelled Ann Njemanze's registration of Domitila as a trademark. Now, as straight as to the point as that might sound, Zeb insists that Ann Njemanze must tender an apology to him In other words, he will not relent in his resolve to see to the end of the matter. Now, despite being advised to settle the matter out of court, he says, I give all glory to God, even as the case is still in court, to prove to the world that I am the rightful owner of the copyright of Domitila. I'm personally, interested and looking forward to see how this entire story pans out, because the entire thing is just quite funny to me. Now, let's move on a little bit to the music scene here in Nigeria, where there's big news for Nigerian Afrobeat singer Divine Ikubo, professionally known as Rema, who has made his debut in the Guinness World Book of Records. Of course, he pulled off this feat with his global record-breaking hit song, Calm Down, which made history as the first #1 hit on the official MENA chart, which is the world's first regional streaming chart and first ever official chart in the Middle East and North Africa. Now, this feat was recognized by the Guinness World Records and announced recently in a statement on its website, sees Rema join the likes of Femi Kuti, Wizkid, Modnan, and other Nigerians with the Guinness World Record. Now, this is a huge congratulations to Rema, because he has been making rounds and numbers with Calm Down. I can't wait to see how far this goes. Now, while we're still talking about making history, Nigerian superstar Tiwa Savage bloomed graciously on stage while performing Keys to the Kingdom at the star-studded concert on the East Lawn at Windsor Castle on Sunday, the 7th of May, 2023, following the coronation of King Charles III and Queen Camilla on Saturday, the 6th of May, 2023. Now, I could go on and on about how spectacular her performance was, but absolutely nothing beats watching it for yourself, so let's check that out. It's her entire performance for me, you guys. I absolutely love it. Now, we recall that the American superstar Beyonce featured Tiwa Savage and Mr. Easy on this song in the Lion King album, and I think it was just perfect for this occasion. Now, she was gorgeously dressed, clothed in a dress by Larry Da Silva, and her performance was accompanied by an orchestra that included violinists, drummers, and backup singers who sang in Yoruba language. This, I must say, was the best part for me. Absolutely loved this part continuously. I just want to hear from Olive and us. This performance, if you got to see this performance, what was it like for you? Because this, for me, was everything.
Very proud. Really very, very proud of Tiwa for raising the Nigerian flag, and even prouder that she wore green.
Exactly.
Which reminded us of the Nigerian flag. Tiwa is a queen all day, any day. She looked gorgeous in that dress. The dress was different. We're used to seeing Tiwa in other outfits, but it was just different to see her in a cocktail dinnerish dress.
Yes.
And she looked stunning. And her vocals, oh my goodness.
Splendid. It was like a touch of rose, like a touch, like refined diamond, I must say.
Yeah, I'm extremely proud of her, because this doesn't happen often. The next time you'll be seeing the coronation of the King of England would be in a couple of decades. The last, of course, Queen Elizabeth was almost 900 years old before she passed.
Wow.
And so I don't think anybody alive today, well, not very many people alive today got to see her coronation, and so for Tiwa's name to be a part of the history, this very historical moment, is something huge. So I'm super, super, super proud of her. And Prince Charles. Well, anyway,
absolutely,
there will be another one soon. That's my point.
Sorry, what does that mean?
I didn't watch the coronation.
I have no idea what you speak about.
Because the current king is already his in his evening time, and so I'm sure in another
my uncle.
Maybe,
is my uncle you're talking about?
Please leave Uncle Charlie alone.
In another maybe 15 years, max, or 20
well
years.
done, Supreme Creator.
Anyway, let's also talk about the Zebedee. So I feel bad, seeing these two legends fight over one of the movies that made our childhood. It's really, really heartbreaking. I hope that they can figure things out, and we can put this to an end.
mean, I personally feel like, suing the producer for 50 million for a movie that is originally his, she trademarked the exact year where he actually, they announced that they were going to do a remake. That was the year 2020. That was the year she trademarked the name after the announcement. So it's kind of fishy because it looks like you actually intended to do something like that to them.
Yeah. I mean, I think both of them understand, I don't know the legal, parts of some of all of this, what really went on, but my point is, and Njemanze and of course Zebe Jiro, those are names we knew in the 90s,
Yeah.
These are movies that we grew up with.
Yeah,
these are,
exactly.
some of the people that were part of the movies that we grew up with. And so it's even great seeing that Zebe Jiro is still, alive and kicking. I'm excited about that part, same
Yeah.
thing with them and Njemanze. I just wouldn't like to see them, having to go at each other. I would rather, that they're creating more movies and they're making more remakes and some of all of that. That would be more fun.
Yeah, that would be more fun. Let's see how it ends, Is that a 500 million naira or an apology? So let's see.
We'll see. All right. Thanks a lot for stopping by and good to see you, Ibo
Thank you very much.
All right. Now let's share with you what comes up later today on News Central, right after Breakfast Central ends.
At 2 p.m. West African time, we have Village Square Africa.
And at 4:30 p.m. West African time, E Central comes your way.
And at 7 p.m. West African time, we have Politics HQ. All right. And this is where we say it is a wrap on Breakfast Central. What is your top story of the day?
It would have to be the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal, the conversation we had with Inibe Effiong. He's the one that I said made the video, airline turbulent video.
Right.
Yeah. And mostly because of how important it is for Nigerians across the country and even Nigerians abroad to see that their judicial system doesn't fail them. I think, I've seen a lot of tweets, hundreds of tweets, saying that the judiciary should not fail. A lot of people do not have faith in the executive, to do anything to improve the life of Nigerians. A lot of people don't have faith in legislative, arm of government either. But the judiciary, as they always say, is the last hope of the common man, or some of all of that. And so there's a lot of hope or prayer rather that the judiciary does not fail them. I believe, and like I said it before, that Presidential Election Petition Tribunal should not take this long. And he also mentioned that it shouldn't take this long, because the President-elect has a right of appeal. It shouldn't take this long. This might be another 1 year of going back and forth concerning this. But we hope, and I would pray that the tribunal does the right thing.
And we hope that they probably would agree to stream live, to abate, or to reduce the fears of, majority of Nigerians. That's all that we have this morning. We'll see you again tomorrow. I'm Olive Emodi.
And I am Osaogi Ogbawa.